folks. Welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, the ambassador of common sense, and I'm here with
Dan, the ambassador of nonsense. Welcome, everyone.
And, I don't even know. You know what? I guess you might say this is kind of a revisit of the vaccine idea. But I'm looking at I have a feeling I'm popping. Hold on. I never had pops. It's just, it took me a long time to figure out what the settings were. I'm just
okay.
I think I took care of it. I'm going to have to just hope. And if I didn't, I apologize now. I will not look. Oh, wait a minute. This has that. Let me try this. Pop, pop. It's got that directional setting, you know? Yes.
You can set it for almost unidirectional or like a cardioid. Or stereo, kind of.
Well, let's see if this works. We're going to have to just go on with it, and I'll worry about it later. So, we took a week off. Let's see, Danny was in some hole in Montana.
I wasn't in Montana, I was in Wyoming.
Wyoming.
I visited the Grand Tetons, Yellowstone National Park, the Shoshone Black Hills, the Shoshone National Forest, the Black Hill National Forest, Badlands National Park.
Well, you were just all over the place.
I was all over the place.
Okay.
It was actually pretty fun.
I stayed home, and I was going to record, but I don't know. The thing is, okay, I had something to say, and I think it's interesting, but the thing is, if it's not a good podcast, then what was the point of it, you know? And we've both tried doing podcasts on our own, and they're just not that good.
Well, yeah.
You know? You lose the conversation. I know that I can't make a speech or talk sound conversational without someone else there. So it would be a wasted podcast. So I thought I'll just wait until Danny gets back or Jason agrees to do it, and then that's what I did. So anyway, the thing is, while you were driving around in the canyons, I was rereading Chesterton. Do you remember, like, when you first started reading him, how brilliant everything was?
Yeah.
I don't know if you were as amazed by him as I was. But
often still is when I go back and read him.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know why you're saying when I first started.
Well, I mean, after I started looking at some of his ideas on his economic philosophies, it lost kind of some of its luster.
Okay,
there,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. He was pulled by a sort of he got into that whole distributism thing.
Yeah.
Economics wasn't his area of study.
Correct.
Of attention. I mean, so
another big problem I have with reading him is that you're reading and he's talking to a group of people who understand the culture that they're living in. And not to people generations later, you know?
Yeah.
He's a big name dropper.
To names that are maybe common at the time. Oh, yeah, this guy said this, but, of course he's only doing that in order to make sure that this other guy doesn't get to say it or something like that,
And I found that you can either go look up these people and spend 2 days getting through the first page of something, or you can just keep reading and then suddenly everything clicks, which is what I did when in the first few pages of Heresy, I think it was. He talked about man being led by ideals, and that being the guide that would inspire them to do what they do, and how over time it wasn't the ideal that inspired them, but it became to where there were no ideals. There was no reason to keep going on in any one direction. And for each area of life was it advanced, but not along some kind of specific line. It was like it was advancement for the sake of advancement, or it was just flat out selfishness
without deliberation
or
of direction.
Yeah. So, for example, man.
It's kind of like.
Go ahead. No.
Well, I was going to say it's like when we camp out in Daniel Boone National Forest, and then we go on hikes, and we have a goal. You know, we there are cool things that we want to see. We like to see vistas. We like to see rock formations. We like to see, valleys and stuff like that. And there's a point where it's almost, if you lose the taste for that, and so you just go hiking, to be walking in any particular direction without any goal of why you're hiking in the first place. Not that you want to see wildlife, not that you want to see particular kinds of trees, not that you want to see particular geologic formations or anything else. It's just for the sake of walking. And therefore you're not deliberate about the direction you're going to walk or about the path you're going to follow or anything like that.
Yeah.
You'll get somewhere, but, not necessarily anywhere meaningful.
I'll take it even a little bit further, and this was part of the experience down there, is that we're going down there every year, and, the original goal was to go and see the rock formations. That was why we were going, to hike. Actually, it was kind of originally, it was the idea of some of us had thought about taking the Appalachian Trail, and we thought, there's no way any of us are going to be able to do that. Why don't we go to Red River Gorge? There's a lot of trails down there as kind of a build-up, a practice. Mm-hmm. But the idea was to hike. But over the years, people would hear about, so more guys start going. And little by little, we're not really going down there to hike. We're just going down there. And a lot of people are coming down and just drinking. And it turned into a 3-day party.
With very little hiking.
Yeah, with hardly any. I think at one point we went on 1 2-hour hike. And that was it the whole weekend.
The whole weekend. Wow.
And that was the weekend we said...
That was before I started joining.
All right, no more cabins. No more taking it easy. We're going down camping. No electricity. And we're going to camp and hike. And all the people who just wanted to party stopped going. And it was a good move, I think. But, a more historic example is war. We used to have ideals, and that was the purpose of the war. And there were a lot of... And I imagine that it wasn't always driven by these ideals, but generally that was the pretext. For example, the Crusades, we were there to drive out the Muslims and win back the Holy Land. That was the purpose.
Think about old war. Alexander the Great, he had an ideal, which was to conquer the world, to rule the world, but it was an ideal that drove everything he did.
Yeah.
He didn't just go out and make war because he was bellicose in his temperament.
Yeah. Well, once we lost the ideals, the war didn't go away. As a matter of fact, they got much bigger. Mm-hmm. World War I and World War II, I don't think we could compare those wars.
World War One.
Huh?
I think especially World War One.
Yeah, it was almost purposeless. At least World War II, there were some vindicating outcomes,
And some people who needed to be stopped. Whether the advancement of the Nazis and on the other side the advancement of the Japanese who wanted to take over the world. Would have been funny to see what happened if they had both succeed, because one of them was it was going to come to a showdown between them.
They would have had to fight sometime.
There were at least people who, in some principle of thought, needed to be stopped. But World War I was almost completely pointless.
Yeah, we see this same kind of drive in things like science. Let's look at our trip to the moon. This really was driven by the ideal that we can prove capitalism is better than communism. Two sides were competing to get to the moon first.
Yeah.
We spent so much money, and I don't.
There's a lot of good technology that came out of that effort.
Right.
To be sure.
Getting to the moon didn't necessarily help us a whole lot, but
yeah,
getting to the moon, we had to find out about all kinds of things, and out of that came satellites, which practically run our society today.
Yeah. Well, think about. I mean, you got to take a very contemporary example. Think about COVID. Not to sound too conspiracy theorist, but it's becoming. It seems more and more likely as truths and facts are unfolding and becoming revealed that COVID was.
Oh my gosh! You are jumping the gun.
A leak. Sorry.
That's the direction we're driving.
Okay, well, I was just going to point out that that's another example of, it's like you take, okay, you know what? I could step back. I can do Nazis. Think about the Nazi doctors.
Yeah.
I mean, when people say, hey, we got to let scientists rule our world, or we need to, they want to give a big sort of a scepter to scientists.
Yeah.
Well, okay, look at Nazism. Those were men who thought, hey, this is knowledge. This is an interesting question. I'm going to answer this question. What happens when I put this Jew and that Jew in, extreme circumstances of pain and torture and suffering, where one has the ability to end it maybe by killing the other Jew or something like that? Absolutely horrendous experiments that they would do. Keep a mother from feeding her baby to see how long it would take for the mother to decide to kill the baby in order to quit, cease the baby's suffering. Stuff like that.
Right.
That's what happens when you say, let science be the ideal without an ideal to guide science.
And we look through history. What was the ideal? What drove the medical society? It started with a Catholic, at least Christian, ideal that man is sacred and ought to be saved from disease or from dying or from pain, because man is created in the image of God, and we can't treat man like an animal. We save man. That is the point of medicine.
Even before Christianity and I don't know how much medicine, developed in the pre-Christian Jewish, Hebrew societies, but even before, we have within the Western culture at least, and I suspect that there is at least some echo of this both in Far Eastern culture, maybe in Indian culture, but certainly in Western culture you have things like the Hippocratic Oath, what I'm saying it wrong, but there was a concept of Hippocratic Oath.
That's weird that it happened to you and not me, because this always happens to me.
That medicine has a goal that's oriented around a larger picture of the purpose of being human.
Yeah.
That, there were people who were able to somehow intuit that even prior to Christianity, which gives the reason behind it. And that has been at the roots of medical practice within Western society, certainly, and probably in some other societies as well.
And in most societies, I don't know a whole lot about, ancient Greece. I know Aristotle believed that we were created, didn't he?
Yes, he believed we were created.
The the Indians, Native American Indians, certainly believed we were created, and they believed that man was better than everything else because we were created. It was part of man's value went back to the Creator.
Oh, interesting.
And I imagine it's like that with most, except, I don't know, you know, some of these, the Hindus or whatever, they worship these cows and stuff, and they put some animals on the same level as man. But most don't. But even then, it still goes back to the creation being why men are special, even if something else is up there with us. That's a huge part of it. But we've erased the Creator, and now there's no real principle to guide medicine, and it's advancement for the sake of advancement. And, well, just like the Nazis, now we're committing all kinds of abominations and atrocities. We're doing terrible things to babies, and, you know, some of these babies are to the point where they can even feel pain and stuff, and we're not even, that's not even a part of our thoughts on whether or not we should do it.
Yeah. That's you know, the part of the field that I'm in involves genetic diagnostic techniques.
Yeah.
And, you know, we are developing the ability to more and more easily, more quickly diagnose a whole variety of not just genetic disorders, diseases, propensities, etc., but simply the genes themselves, I guess you would say that the genetic makeup of this or that baby. Oh, okay, this baby is going to have this kind of blood type and this kind of you know, they'll eventually get around to hair color and eye color, but
what are you creating, a little Gattaca society over there?
It's kind
That's
of
scary.
like, it's kind of going that direction, just in terms of the ability, I mean, the capabilities. So now most of what's out there is a good thing. Okay, I'll give you an example. Take sepsis. You know,
take what?
Bacterial infection, sepsis.
Okay.
It's a bacterial infection. People get it in hospitals. When it sets in, it kills very fast. And most of the ways of detecting bacterial infection are to take a culture, put it in a petri dish, let it grow for a few days, and then see if there's the kind of bacteria that you don't want. Well, by the time that happens, the person's dead.
Okay.
You say, oh, we should have treated them for sepsis. You know, well, now they have genetic tests. You can test the DNA of the bacteria that causes sepsis within a couple of hours and get the person treated.
Okay, see,
so
when you're talking
example.
about
that's
this, I'm
thing.
thinking along the lines of babies and like, okay, so what good does it do to find out this baby has a disease?
Right. So you can also, for example, now do not just indications, but actual detection of certain genetic conditions, diseases, you know, from the womb. And
how does that help?
Here's the thing. If it means that you can say, oh, these parents are going to have a little bit of a hard time, let's get them some help, set them up with some resources, let them know that, you know, loving their baby is going to, they're going to need to rely on some other people as they go through their life with this baby. That's how that can help. Mm-hmm. But in most of the world, what's it going to mean? Oh, we found this problem with your baby. We think you should get rid of it, is what it's going to turn into.
Yeah.
And so you see what I mean? It's like the diagnosis is the one thing, but the context where this stuff is developing, especially, you know, you develop these medical tests and say, okay, great. And who was it who developed these medical tests? Well, ultimately, it's a company that's owned by this Chinese company. Okay, well, guess what? You just probably pulled the trigger on, you know, eventually, you know,
thousands, maybe
a few
millions.
100,000 babies.
Yeah.
depending on the prevalence of the condition or whatever, so.
And it's not just the early detection of disease, but the ability to treat diseases. At one time, man, the average age was the man didn't live commonly past the age of 35.
Really?
That
would surprise me. Do you think that's real?
That's what I was always told, isn't it?
Because like in the Psalm, it says, man's life is 70 years or 80 for those who are strong.
Oh, I didn't. You're right, but I was always told that the average lifespan was like 35.
Oh, you know what? It probably was. It probably was if you considered the infant mortality rate.
Ah, yeah.
So it's okay. Lots of people die before they're the age of 2, but once they reach the age of 4, it's more likely that they're going to live into an old age of 60, 70, 80.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I never
I think
thought
that's
about
how it
that.
works.
Okay. Well, either way, we are enabling people to live longer and longer.
Yes.
But because we've lost the ideal, we've gotten to a point where we said, well, wait a minute, why do we want them to live so long? Now we're killing them off.
Once upon a time, it would have been, we want them to live long so they can keep teaching us.
Or let's face it, they get to a certain age.
Family,
well,
and
many old people get to a certain age where it's like, no, they're not going to teach. But the life in general has value.
Yeah.
You're supposed to take care of your parents, even in their old age, even as they start to lose their minds.
Yep.
But we're not talking about that anymore. We're talking about when to end their lives because they are no longer useful to us. And why is that even a conversation?
Exactly. That's how medicine is going. Medicine is becoming a game of what can I do to get around nature to make my life what I want it to be, rather than, what medicine once upon a time was, what can I do to get myself back onto nature's intended track for myself? Because nature intends us to have, certain things.
Yeah, comfort.
Nature intends us to
joy.
Nature intends us to be able to eat and then to be able to expel the waste after we've extracted the nutrients. Okay, well, if somebody has problems doing that, medicine has an answer for that, to get you back onto nature's track.
Yeah.
But if you say, you know what, eating's not that exciting to me, I don't really like eating. Could you just insert a port and feed nutrients directly into my bloodstream and not let me eat anymore? I mean, that's the kind of thing that modern medicine would gladly, if there were somebody to pay for it, if there was a market for that, they would gladly be going down that road. Now, of course,
there's
cases where
talk about
where we want to do that.
A drug that would enable a person to not sleep ever.
Oh, right. Hey, sleeping's a waste of time. Just give me a drug to keep me awake all the time and let me be productive. That way I don't have to sleep, I don't have to dream, I don't have to, I just work all the time. Or if I'm super rich, I can just be awake and enjoy, whatever life all the time. I don't know, whatever they do.
How much enjoyment can you get out of it? Because I'm going to stay awake to enjoy things. Although I can kind of see that. I remember...
And I can sit up and watch
as I was
Wayne
younger, I'd be like...
long.
I don't want to go to sleep because I might miss something. But I have to work the next day, but I'm going to do it. And I can't do that anymore, but I do remember doing that.
But the thing is, you could think that way when you were younger, because even if you managed to get away with that a few nights in a row, hey, maybe it's a weekend's come. It's like, you know what, I'm going to stay up all night because it's a weekend. Whatever. Okay, you do that for a weekend and whatever. But if you were to do that every night, if you were to have a drug, like you said, it could just make you stay awake every night, all the time, never need to sleep. It's like, well, gee, in our sort of our human condition, or I guess our fallen condition, that, it's kind of nice to slip into sleep,
Yeah. It's restful.
But there were people who would say, oh yeah, if you could do that for me, do that for me. And there are people who would say, oh, if you'll pay me to do that, I'll find a way to do that for you if I can. And I think that's the point, is that medicine has become, let's conquer nature in order to give us what we think nature should have given us.
Yeah. And we really have gotten to a point where the entire medical community, the overriding question is, should this person be saved? I mean,
does this person deserve to live?
The death panels really do exist.
Is this person's life worth living? Right.
Should we put these resources into helping this person? And they're not as powerful right now in America as they would like to be, because there are still people, they still do exist, and they still do have power to end people's lives, but not quite as much. I would say that that brings us to this virus, when we've decided to meddle in certain things that maybe we didn't quite understand, without a whole lot of idea whether or not we ought to. But what came out of that, and it's becoming more and more clear now that that the COVID virus was created. But if you look at the COVID virus, what does it do? It ends the life of old people. It solves the problem of old age.
Exactly. It solves the, hey, how long should we let people live issue.
Yeah. Now, well, no, they're not going to live that long, because if you have it and then now, if this is a reoccurring virus, which they're already acting as if it is. They're acting like there's already another round of it. I kind of don't believe that yet, but they're saying there's a second wave, a mutation of it coming. I don't think so, but I guess we'll see. But if it's something that we have to deal with every year, then that means, when you get to 70, you can kind of expect to be killed by a man-made disease.
Right.
If it happens that way.
And if it, I mean, it's looking more and more like it was kind of, I don't know, a man-made disease, whether it got loose, was released on purpose or whatever. But, it's kind of funny because the people who are working on this kind of stuff, the viruses, the gain of function, that's a phrase that nobody knew that phrase 8 months ago.
Right.
Now everybody knows it. But it's a real thing. It's something people do. But, it reminds me of a quote. You've seen Jurassic Park. Everybody's seen Jurassic Park by now, right?
Yeah.
That quote from Jeff Goldblum.
Right.
He said, well, our scientists have done tremendous work here. He said, and his response is, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should. And that's kind of like modern medicine. Yeah,
exactly. And now that, the funny thing is that they still aren't asking that. No, the rest of the world is asking that, but all they're worried about is trying to cover it up.
It's like, I think we don't often, we do often. I'll give credit where credit's due. Dinesh D'Souza, who kind of pointed this out in my mind, that they're probably covering it up because they don't want to lose their funding and their ability to keep doing this kind of research.
Yeah.
It's not even, for most of the scientists out there, it's not some kind of nefarious doomsday, let's figure out a way to rid the world of the human population thing that they're doing. It's just that they're having a lot of fun, and
now everybody's going to say,
it's what they're good at. And if people say, "What? Why are you doing this?" And then they have to stop doing it, find something else to be good at.
And on top of that, and again, we don't know exactly what they were trying to do with this specific virus, and we don't know whether it leaked or it was let out, and we don't know who did it. But
Right.
what I do know is that now, because of this virus, we've got a new kind of vaccine that's coming out. And of course, when it first came out, I was pretty impressed with it, but I had absolutely no intention of taking it, and I would have wanted to convince my parents not to take it, despite the fact that they're more endangered by the COVID, just because it's new and we don't know what it's going to do yet. I mean, we know how it works, but we don't know how it works.
Right. That's one of the things. It's like I actually got the vaccine.
You did?
And it was an economic reason. This trip that I went on, I had to either have the vaccine or have a negative test within 3 days of the trip in order to go on the trip. Well, we had already spent the money a long time ago. We were going to Ireland. That didn't work out, obviously. And we decided, you know what, we have to use this travel credit by the end of 2021 or something like that. And the rest of the world is still crazy. Let's just use the money to do something in America. So we decided on this Western thing. So we got it all booked and everything. And then they came out with this rule. Well, in order to go on the trip, you either have to have the vaccine or show a negative test within 3 days. Well, I thought, I'm not concerned about getting COVID, but there are false positives on those tests. So what if I, go get the test, it comes back false positive? Where does that leave me?
You just don't go on a trip?
Because I don't go on the trip, but I've already taken off the work. Terry's taken off the work. There's
that
a
was
lot of
pretty
money.
easy.
In other words, there was a lot of money
in the
stake.
military right now being pressured like you wouldn't believe to get the vaccine.
I bet. Now,
he's standing up to it. I wonder if they threatened to
where...
not let him go on a trip if he would do it. I'm poking at you.
I know.
I don't know what to say.
But here's the point.
I think that was dumb.
Point that I want to make. I'm the age that it's like, I'm past my reproductive years. I'm not in the super at-risk COVID years yet. I'm actually the one who should be receiving the vaccine.
Except that you've already
you'll be able
had
to
the
see
disease.
whether it has... I probably did.
You did.
I don't know it absolutely. I've never been tested for it. I think I did.
All right. Well...
But I've never been tested. I'm convinced that... Okay, let me say... I'm convinced that I've had it. But I can't state it mathematically. But the thing is, in terms of the vaccine itself, I'm the one who should be receiving it. Because now, if there's going to be side effects, those will show up in me down the road. But I'm not going to be passing them on to my children or anything like that.
Yeah.
Our children should not be getting this vaccine.
Yeah.
Because of its lack of long testing, the newness of the technology, and so on and so forth. That's the point that I want to make.
Okay. Well, the thing is that it's not just that they're practically forcing children. There's no... when you want to go in for a clinical trial of anything, and this is a clinical trial. Well, it's not a clinical trial. It's a trial. This is a trial. Yeah. And when you have any kind of trial, you got a list of things that qualify you for a trial. If they're trying to, excuse me, if they're trying to prevent a disease with a new drug, and you've already had the disease and are done with the disease, you're not going to qualify for the trial. There's no reason.
You won't get into the trial. But they do this time.
Yeah. And it's making no sense whatsoever. And again, it's in a new area of science that I don't think there's anything wrong with exploring this and using it when as we're able to, but
with appropriate cautions.
Yeah, there's no caution thrown here. As a matter of fact, like I said, they're forcing people to get it practically. And they're doing everything they can to get as many people as they can on this vaccine. And it just, there's so many reasons not to do it now. There was a lot of reasons not to do it. Now, I can't think of a single reason to do it.
Yeah,
the fact that they're forcing it tells me there's something very, very wrong with this.
There's something bad. Yeah, there's right, exactly. Well, it doesn't help that you have kooks out there claiming that it makes you magnetic. Stuff like that.
Well, that's another problem because
part of the problem is that there's so much stupid misinformation about it that it makes everybody who's against it sound like a nut.
Yeah. I mean, we've discussed the science of the vaccine a little bit here, and we've got the aborted fetus part of it being one part. There is that part.
Yep. That's problematic.
It's problematic. I don't think we even know whether or not this is a definite sin if we are cooperating with evil by using these vaccines. But I know most Americans have already done it because the MMR, those are aborted babies.
Right. Those, and I have not been able to figure out for myself. Maybe you know, is the MMR continuing to be manufactured using aborted baby cell lines, or was it just used in testing?
I believe they are used. It is created with aborted cell lines.
See that makes that. But
there
of course, we've all had it.
I didn't even know.
Our parents didn't know. Right.
All of my kids had it. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't let them get the chicken pox. But
is that one of those too?
You know what? No, the chicken pox, as far as I know, was testing, not created with the cell lines. But Jason, I guess, kind of discovered this after several children, and all of all the kids since he discovered it have. There are alternatives.
Yeah.
And
with chickenpox,
he's used those alternatives.
Kids do not die from chickenpox.
Right.
And that's why people used to have exposure parties.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody has chickenpox. All right, everybody bring your babies over. You know.
The same way children do not die of COVID.
Right. Exactly. Hey,
it
COVID,
is
bring your babies over.
Absolutely moronic to give these kids a vaccine. Untested vaccine.
Untested, right.
That is my problem with it now, is the fact that, number one, the left and the government is pushing it so hard. And number
and anything
two,
that they're pushing, you know there's something wrong with it.
Right. And number two, that they're lying about it. They're lying about side effects. They're lying about the number of deaths caused by it. They were lying about COVID deaths. And we know for a fact that they were lying about it. We know for a fact that they were inflating the numbers. And we know for a fact that they're lying about the vaccine.
And we know for a fact that, I mean, in two different states, they were lying about the effects of how they were handling the COVID.
Yeah.
Quarantines and stuff. Of course, the New York is the one big one. I forget what the other state was, but there was another state.
Wyoming, I think.
Was it Wyoming?
I thought it was.
That's surprising. That's such a sparsely populated state.
Yeah, I know. Well, it kind of butts up against Chicago, doesn't it? Am I thinking of the right? Hold on.
No, you're thinking of Wisconsin.
No, I gotta look at I'm thinking of Wisconsin. Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking of Wisconsin, not Wyoming.
Yeah.
I get the W states
that makes
mixed
sense.
Up. Okay. But I thought it was Wyoming. Maybe it was Wisconsin. Maybe it was something else.
It could be Wyoming, but
I don't know what it doesn't matter.
But
point is, there were more than one lying
official
about
lies.
it. Yeah,
there were multiple official lies about COVID. Why does anybody believe that there are not multiple official lies about the vaccine when we know there are multiple official lies about COVID?
When they're lying about something, it's a good idea to stay away. I mean, That's really all we can say about it, is that they're lying about it. We can't say anything definite at this point, other than, because people, for example, when they introduced fluoride into drinking water, there were all kinds of side effects reported at first.
Uh-huh.
I don't think we have any idea if any of those actually happened. I guess I could imagine if no one ever had fluoride and then all of a sudden they started drinking it, maybe there would be some side effects from that. But as far as I know, most of it was kind of most of it was imagined.
Okay.
I
remember Dad talking.
That's
about
the
that.
way I understand it. Yeah.
I never did do any research or looking up on the whole fluoride controversy.
I remember seeing one or two old sitcoms that talked about it briefly.
Okay.
So there was a time, but this was in like the 60s or 70s when they were introducing it, and everybody was like, "What the heck are you talking about? You're going to put poison in our water?" And they did do it. I don't know if it helped people's teeth. I have terrible teeth. My teeth fall apart for no
Dad
reason.
Explained it like it was like something that was a side effect of how they were processing the water, and they couldn't figure out a way to process the water without getting rid of the fluoride, so they just made up a story that it helps your teeth.
No, well,
that's how Dad explained it to me.
I think he misunderstood. It was an industrial byproduct, and they didn't know what to do with it.
So they just dumped it in the drinking water.
Yeah.
Or in the river water, which became...
That's what the literature said.
Okay.
That this company, there was this huge byproduct. I think it had something to do with the manufacturing of steel. And there were all kinds of restrictions on how they could dispose of it. And they hired some lawyers to find out what they could do with it. And the lawyers came up with the idea of putting it in drinking water.
Okay.
That was what the claim was. I don't know how much.
So they started selling it to city water processing systems.
We grew up in a household where conspiracy theories were just every direction you could think of.
Yeah.
And growing up, we heard almost all of them. But anyway, this is not
Which is interesting
fluoride.
because it means we're comfortable around them too, but we're also not like,
right.
Susceptible to them.
Right. So we hear them all the time, and it doesn't alarm us. At the same time, we don't just dismiss them, because some of them are true.
Exactly.
People conspire. Mm-hmm. Governments conspire. Yeah. Groups within governments conspire. So, and it looks like COVID, in the creation,
there was
at least,
some conspiring around COVID.
I mean, they had to plan to make this virus. We don't know why they were making it, but...
whether it was one fat lady's research or, some group who were making it for a specific purpose.
Or the Chinese government. If we look at the results, look, China doesn't want to take care of old people.
Yeah, that's true.
They would have no problem getting rid of all of their old people. Once you cease to be useful to society, they would just as soon be rid of you.
Yeah.
But they also know, and so they know that Americans and most other cultures do value their old and would use resources to take care of them.
Yeah.
And to try to keep them from dying. So, this is a win-win for China if this is what their plan was. It would be a good plan for China.
Yeah.
It would cripple most of the world. It would not cripple them. Their only problem is, what do we do with the bodies?
Exactly. To get an idea how because every time we talk about this virus, it comes back to China. But to get an idea, you're exactly right. China They do not value their old people. If they could find a way to say, let's just get rid of all of our old people, they would. That's absolutely something that they would go for. And to get an idea how evil they are in that, consider this, that the Nazis, who are, in many people's minds, the definition of evil in the 20th century, the Nazis at least were humane enough that their platform included the idea that it's a responsibility of society to take good care of its elderly, to provide for its elderly. Yeah. Not even the Nazis quite approached the evil that is China today.
And not just China, but in parts of America like New York. I don't see how you could see Cuomo's actions as anything other than what would you call that? I mean, it was genocide.
Against old people and covering up about it.
That's what it was.
And completely preventable. Trump offered the what was the ship? Trump offered.
Yeah, he said the whole
ship
that
to house people
use.
offshore for quarantine purposes, and just so that he could not accept help from Trump, he murdered a bunch of old people.
I don't think it was that though. I think those old people are a drain on the New York economy.
Oh, it's kind of like the Russians. We talked about that. Where the Russians... Yeah. No, it was... was it we who talked about, or did I hear this on DeSouza again? That, under the communist rule, the townspeople would be asked to... Yeah. The town mayors.
Yeah, we talked about that.
You need to select 5,000 people. And they might, can I give you 10?
Yeah, because the town was like...
to feed everybody.
Yeah, I can't feed all these people. New York, because they've forced people into government health care and private insurance is becoming a thing of the past for more and more people, then the government has to foot all these bills, including end-of-life care and nursing homes. So how do they can get rid of them? They can get rid of this expense by getting rid of the old people. I am thoroughly convinced that's what he did. I guess there's no way to ever prove this, but it's so evil. It's beyond description.
Perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's about all I've got on this subject.
It's funny because I thought you were going to go in a completely different direction, because I was prepared to make the point, because I was thinking like in terms of like the insurance in the medical insurance industry.
Okay, you know what? Because okay, here's the thing.
All right, are we opening up a whole new hour of
kind of? Well, here's the thing. When I was all the stuff that I've just said, that was what I was thinking as I was reading this. So I jotted it all down in this outline, and then I set it here next to the computer so I could read it. But as I was driving around, I thought about the financial part of this.
Yeah.
And I sent you the text specifically so I would remember to bring it up, because it's not in my notes. Thank you for bringing that up.
All right.
Okay, here we go. Because it's, aside from all the things we've just mentioned, there are two parts of this. Number one, there's the financial part. Things like nursing homes and hospitals at one time were created as charities with the guiding principle that people, even old people, ought to be taken care of. Yeah, and that we should extend their lives as far as we can without doing crazy things, and make them somewhat comfortable. That's why these institutions existed. Most of the hospitals in Cincinnati were started by charities, most of them by Catholic nuns, who would set up a little place and say, let's take care of sick people. And they would do this for free. That's why they existed, just to take care of people. They became profit centers. And they changed their purpose changed. They're no longer guided by any kind of principle other than make money. And that's happened in the old folks' homes too. I don't know about other areas. I do know
People
about
don't call them old folks' homes.
Okay. Nursing homes.
I don't know what the proper modern term is, but yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable with old folks' homes.
Well, it's where people who can't take care of themselves.
San Piazadora retirement community.
Who need 24/7 care. This where they go. Yeah. And so they've been taken over by profit centers. And look what's happening. They don't hire competent people. And they don't hire competent people because they're not allowed to pay their people more than a certain amount.
Right.
And
otherwise, they don't meet the guidelines.
Yeah, so the people who are working there are barely making minimum wage, and they're not allowed to hire more than a certain number of nurses, even though the law requires a certain number of nurses to be there at all times. Most of them are breaking those laws. Now, Aunt Berta went to how many different like 6 or 7 different nursing homes. And some of them were state funded, some of them were private. Almost all of them, all of them were really, really atrocious. The kinds of things that Vicky saw happening in every single one of them was heartbreaking. And many of these old people had no one to fight for them, so they just had to take it. And it was on the level of torture. But, Vicky went out, she smokes, so she goes out to smoke a cigarette, and here, other people tend to gather and you talk, and you get a lot of odd conversations in a smoking area that you wouldn't get anywhere else. It is the strangest phenomenon.
That is weird, because you'd think water cooler conversations would be the same.
Yeah, it's more than that. It's different. People open up to you in ways that they don't even open up to their... You'll have someone tell you secrets that they wouldn't even tell their spouse in the smoking set. I don't know why this is.
That is weird.
You get really close to your smoking buddies. But anyway, one of the guys who came out to smoke he delivered medical equipment to certain arees, and he was waiting for them to do something, so he came out to smoke. And he said that there aren't any good nursing homes in Ohio. There just aren't. And he told her some of his stories that he had witnessed. And it just made me realize that the fact that these are profit centers and they no longer have the guiding principle of caring for the elderly, because the elderly are still created in the image and likeness of God, then that's what happens. It's just what happens. It's expected. But we've taken even that a step further, because somehow these woke ideas got introduced. And so you've got some part of it being controlled by profit and another part of it being controlled by the idea that we need to figure out how to get rid of these people.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like that's happening, and my evidence for that is New York and a couple other places. It's happened actually in several states. There are lawsuits that are creeping up. I think, but Cuomo was the big one, and he's the one who tried to cover it up.
Yeah.
But in medicine in general, we've got that coming up with Bill. What's his name? The Microsoft guy.
Oh, Bill Gates.
Yeah, Bill Gates taking over a lot of this stuff and deciding that his guiding principle is that there need to be less people on the planet.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if he was always a kook or if he just became a kook when he decided that his ability to, get lucky in his negotiations with IBM caused him to ultimately make a lot of money, and so therefore he ought to be considered an expert on everything.
Yeah. I don't know.
But, the thing is, this whole profit motive of medicine, I really think that has its seeds in the medical insurance industry. And I became convinced that there was something evil, going on within that industry back in the 90s when even it was even earlier than that this was happening, but I didn't quite become aware of it until the 90s when I had to, I had a family and had to be concerned about medical insurance and that kind of stuff. And I learned that, it had been natural for doctors to deliver the care that's needed and allow their patients to pay what they can.
Yeah.
In fact, if you think about it, people like, the modern left, they love this socialist ideal, and a lot of socialists, if they have a little bit of a Christian bent to them, will point to, things like the gospel and from each, they lived kind of a socialistic, everybody gave what they were capable, from each according to his abilities, to each according to their needs, blah, blah, blah. That's how these doctors would operate. That ideal is what you saw in medical professions. Doctors treated what needed to be treated, and they accepted whatever the patients were capable of giving in order to allow them to go on practicing medicine and treating people.
And it wasn't necessarily set up that way. It's just that's how it was practiced.
Doctors, doctors knew that. It was a ministry to many doctors. Well, the medical insurance industry is what put an end to that. The medical insurance industry is what lobbied to make it illegal for doctors to practice charity.
Yeah.
You cannot charge a patient less for your service because they're less capable of paying. That is considered insurance fraud. The medical insurance industry drove a wedge between the concept of medicine and charity. To me, that's where the evil really germinates in medicine, modern medicine.
Yeah, that's true. I've never thought about that part of it. And it's also, they've also done things like, for example, Good Sam Hospital. I think it was I think Good Sam, but it might be one of the other ones. It was started by like 6 nuns who got together and bought a place, and we're going to take care of sick people, and we'll try to get funds. They weren't doctors; they were just nuns.
They were just nuns.
They might have some medical background. Maybe they were nurses or something, but we're not talking about a high level of medical knowledge here. But they took care of sick people. So sick people went there and got taken care of. You couldn't do that now. You can't put a sign in front of your yard and say, hey, if you're sick, come here and I'll help take care of you. You couldn't do that. You
would not be allowed to. Yeah.
Go to jail.
You would malpractice and all that kind of stuff. Right. Practicing medicine without a license and so forth.
So someone who's sick, who has nowhere to go, they've kind of cornered them. The only place you can go is to the government.
Yeah.
And maybe at first it was an insurance company, but now it's the government.
Dependency.
Yeah, it's a shame, and the idea of charity is pretty much gone from the medical industry. The ideal that once
I think the medical insurance industry is I think there's actually something. I don't want to be too over the top, but I think that there is something diabolical. That there's actual diabolical intent. That it's part of the plan of Satan that the insurance industry developed as it did. Now, that doesn't mean that you're cooperating with Satan by having medical insurance. Everybody needs to have that. If you have kids, you've got to have medical insurance. I'm not saying anything like that, but I really think that we're seeing some things play out that in his accumulation of cleverness, Satan has been working on for many decades.
The economic side of it, now combined with all these leftist ideas of bringing down the population, of keeping poor people from reproducing, all of these things, the results are definitely diabolical.
Yeah.
And I don't know much about insurance and how it started and how it suddenly became a necessity, like within a very short amount of time. It was less than 100 years,
Yeah.
But the effect has been very bad and very much against any kind of principle guided by charity. Yeah, definitely.
So, anyway,
okay.
That's my 2 cents.
Now I think I've said everything. Now that you
All
reminded me of that little. I'm glad I texted you that. Because looking at my notes, I completely forgot about that. I had thought about that because I started watching the series House MD, and it just kind of popped in my mind. Because I was writing all this as I watched it, and then the next day I kind of was thinking about the episode. I thought, oh, wait a minute. That kind of fits right in.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to talk about news. I have a ton of news. All kinds of crazy things happening.
Well, you talk because I'm going to step off and go back real quick.
Okay.
I'm listening.
Okay. In the Catholic world, this isn't just news. This is Catholic news. Pope Francis, he sends Father James Martin this letter of support, whatever, which James Martin publishes it and lets everybody see it. And I don't know, we never talk about this guy. I really don't like him. I don't even want to mention his name. But I thought this one time we'll talk a little bit about him. James Martin is a pro-gay, homosexual minister, but I don't really know what that means. He has a ministry, a gay ministry. And that could mean so many things. And it could mean good things. But I don't think it really does. The thing is, when you look at what he says, it's hard to point to a specific thing and say, look, he's telling people it's okay to sin. But the language certainly tells people it's okay to sin. He ministers to parents of gay people and tries to convince them you don't need to hate your children. Obviously, you don't hate children, even if they're gay. But I don't know. There's a gay ministry here in Cincinnati, and I have a friend who was a big part of. I don't know if he was part of the formation of it, but he was part of the development of it. He was there at the beginning and kind of worked through the first, almost 10 years of it. He did a lot of work for it. And we don't talk a whole lot about it because I think it's one of those things that's kind of confidential and anonymous, so you don't mention things. But he did, every now and then he talks a little bit about it, and it's my understanding that when it first started, a lot of people showed up when the Archbishop Schnurr announced it. and they had their first couple meetings. Lots of people showed up. But they seemed to think that this was going to be more or less a place to meet gays. You know? Like a singles party or something. Some of them thought along those lines, as if they actually might be able to hook up with people. Others just thought, okay, this is a place where gays can go and feel okay to be gay. But that's not what it was. It was
was wrong.
We have to, I mean, the thing is, that's what a lot of these ministries are.
Yeah.
Now, the one in Cincinnati is not that. It is a place where people with same-sex attraction are taught how to get along without sinning, you know, and without giving into these sins, and
kind
how
like
to
AA.
function in life. Yeah, kind of like an AA. And it just, I mean, it reminds me of, you know, I've got, or I had, kind of a severe anger problem. So I went to meetings with people who had anger problems. And the idea is to go there to function, but never was the language something like you need to accept your anger problem and live with it and let that be a part of you. The idea is always to overcome it. That's why when you have a dysfunction, that's what your point should be, to try to overcome the dysfunction.
Yeah. Think of a group for alcoholics that are basically booze parties.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of these gay groups are.
Yeah, and certainly that's what James Martin has become. But Pope Francis sent him this letter, and I don't know. It's sad that this is happening.
So
there's
what the
nothing
letter
we can
say?
do
Hey,
about
great
it.
job, keep going. Because you know James Martin, he's been trying. It is clear that he expects and wants the church to change its teaching,
right,
about homosexual relations. Not going to happen, but he doesn't get that because he doesn't accept God's plan.
Hold on, I'm looking for a quote here from the letter. I keep getting places that tell you little quotes instead of just giving you the whole letter.
Yeah, it's hard to do that.
Okay, so here we are. Okay, here's one of the quotes from the letter. God's, air quotes, style has 3 elements. Why would anyone say that? God's style has millions of elements, but most of it is charity. Style has 3 elements: closeness, compassion, and tenderness. I don't know about that.
Tenderness?
Tenderness.
Closeness, compassion, and...
When we look at the cross, do we see any of that?
Style?
God's style has 3 elements: closeness, compassion, and tenderness. This is how he comes closer to each one of us.
God doesn't come closer to us.
I don't.
He draws us closer to him.
Right. And when you look at the cross, remembering that Jesus told us we're going to have to pick up our own cross.
Jesus said, "Hey, follow me."
Was there?
Watch me.
I guess there's
nails through my hands. Crown of
I guess
thorns
you
on
could
my
call
head.
that tenderness because he took those
Flogging.
pains on for us, but he didn't say we weren't going to have to do it.
He said, "Follow me." This
he specifically said we would have to do it.
This is for you. I'm doing it for you, and this is waiting for you. You're going to have to do this too.
Yeah.
So
not very tender.
Yeah.
I guess you could say compassionate.
Closeness. Yeah, compassion.
Closeness,
I guess but that's just so weird. It's just such a weird language. It's like it's a disconnected language. You know what I mean? It's like it's meaningless. It's like who knows what this even means? It's
fantasy.
Yeah.
And he's trying to create. He's trying to take this fantasy that they think of, this utopia, and they're trying to make it real. And you'd think after all these years, these hippies would understand that it's just a fantasy and it can't exist, but they still don't think that.
Yeah, it's almost like he's choosing words, especially, I don't know what the fascination with gays is these days for the church, the church bishops and priests, but he's choosing these words, and the Pope in this case, that it's like, let me choose some words that you can find a way to apply to your homosexual deviance. And then because you can apply them to the homosexual deviance and also apply them to God, that makes them okay. I mean, it's almost like he's doing that. And
to be honest, I don't know a whole lot of gay people. I know a couple of them, and I would not use these words to describe them.
Yeah. No.
They're compassionate in that they seek out people with similar dysfunctions,
that's a good word, dysfunctions, right?
And they try to encourage it, and it's like, be okay with your this foul up in your life, and I don't know, it's a lie, and it's
kind of like like I said, it's the boozer support group who, hey, we're not here to help you be a non-boozer. We're here to help you be supported being a boozer.
Yeah, it's okay to be a boozer.
It's like that. It's exactly like that. Yeah, with all the dysfunctions that it carries.
Yeah, so that's one of the big things going on in the Catholic world, and there are a couple other things that Pope Francis is doing that I thought, well, that's just crazy, but I can only handle one or two of them, so that's the one we'll talk about.
That's the one.
So the U.S. Department of Commerce put sanctions on a couple of Chinese companies for, and these are companies that produce solar panel parts for using forced labor. Now, that is such a tight 5 companies, and what they have in common is that they produce parts for solar panels. And those are the companies that have sanctions placed on them for forced labor, even though most of China is forced labor. So that tells me someone in the U.S. Department of Commerce has some kind of stock in an American company that creates parts for solar panels. That's my thoughts on that. I don't. Well, why 5 companies that happen to produce solar panel parts? There's something fishy there. I think if I chased down the things, I could probably find out, and it probably wouldn't even be hard, but it's not like they don't hide anything anymore. So United Nations voted 184-2 to end the embargo on Cuba. U.S. and Israel were the only no votes.
Were the two?
Yeah.
At least the U.S. voted against ending the embargo.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised.
Who's the maybe Biden hasn't gotten around to appointing a new U.S.
I'm assuming
to the ambassador to the UN
ambassador,
like
because I mean, didn't Obama want to end all the trade restrictions
with Cuba, something like that? Yeah.
That's what my understanding was, especially after what's-his-name died.
But, Biden did something else that was surprising related to... Now, this isn't really related to Israel. It just happens that Israel and the United States are the only 2 countries in the world, apparently, who have any sense. But Biden did something else that was surprising and surprisingly right-minded relating to Israel. And I forget what that was. It was a few weeks ago. Maybe.
I think it had something to do with that, the Palestine and the bombing and stuff like that.
Something like
the money he gave for military to Israel.
Support for Israel. Right.
Now
that a lot of leftists were upset with him for.
I have to wonder if that is somehow connected with the fact that Netanyahu is gone.
Could be.
Soon after that. So whatever Biden did, it's only like it's less than a month later, Netanyahu's gone. So, I don't know. Makes you wonder. So an Indiana woman is sentenced to 3 years probation for her role in the attack on the United States Capitol. So she's the first person to be sentenced.
So she got a sentence. Her role. What was her role?
I don't know. Whatever she did, I guess she walked into the building after being invited by. It's an attack. Yeah. They label it as so. Here's another hats off to what's his name, Dinesh D'Souza. He's really going after this. The revolver news stories about the fact that it seems like the FBI not just knew about it, but actually created this.
Yeah, it's
this
not
was
even
a
a
setup
Trump thing anyway. It's an FBI setup, an entrapment.
And it didn't
scheme.
work for him, and they're pretending that it has.
Yeah,
they wanted to create.
I think they thought a mob was going to fly in and do real violence.
Yeah, I think they thought that's
didn't.
What Trump supporters would do, is that we would go in and we'd actually, break things or kill people or something.
Yeah, instead we took selfies carrying podiums and stuff. I don't know. Stupid stuff. It's like, really? That's your idea of an attack?
But they're proceeding on it. Now, here's the thing. I have, because I always thought that was the case. I didn't know the FBI was involved, but I thought maybe like Antifa is what was behind this. Antifa thought they could get us to do violence on the Capitol, and so they found a way to get us inside. And I thought they had some kind of agreement maybe with the police there.
Some of the police or the guards who are supposed to keep the doors locked or whatever.
But now we're finding out it's actually the FBI that did this. And apparently this has happened several times in the past. They create a conspiracy to do something involving other right-wingers or left-wingers or just crazy people.
Right, whatever. Yeah.
And then they put a stop to it and they say, hey, look what we stopped. And it's like, well, wait a minute. That wasn't going to happen anyway. You did that. That's you guys
starting it. It was never going to happen. Exactly. That's,
There's an argument out there that, okay, maybe that's the case. But there are these radicals out there who could be talked into these kinds of things. If the FBI didn't talk them into it and then arrest them, they would be talked into it by an actual bad guy.
Yeah.
And
if the things that the FBI had talked them into involved going in with guns and shooting people, or going in with bombs and destroying rooms, or going in with hatchets and marking up walls, I might give a little bit of credence to that argument.
Yeah.
But the things that these radicals were talked into were going in and taking selfies carrying podiums.
Yeah.
It's so ludicrous and stupid.
Okay. I know, but I'm talking about the whole idea of the FBI creating a situation where they would talk a radical into... Yeah. I'm talking about the other situations where they've done this, where...
let's say, the FBI talked this guy into wearing a suicide bomber vest and then swooped in and somehow prevented him from setting it off.
That has happened.
It's like, well, okay.
The FBI has talked terrorists into becoming terrorists and then arrested him and said, hey, look what we stopped from happening. We saved hundreds of people.
Yeah, but you know what? Given the right circumstances and the right manipulations, I mean, there's people who say this, and I think it's more true than not. I don't think it's absolutely true of everybody, but I think it's also not absolutely true of nobody. I think it tends to be more true than not that given the right set of circumstances and manipulations, most people can be talked into extreme acts.
Yeah.
And therefore that as a tactic of the FBI is not a valid tactic in the kind of world that the United States is supposed to stand for.
The thing is, in any kind of movement, I don't care what movement it is, and I don't care if it's on the right or on the left. In any movement, there are extremists, and I don't even know what word mean. I mean, I'm an extremist anti-abortion person. Yeah. I'm extreme on that. I think that to the point where I think that if we could stop abortion by blowing up buildings, I would be all for it. I don't think we could.
If it would be effective. I mean, we also are, we believe in Catholic virtues like prudence. So there's a question of if it would be effective. But the calculation of loss of human life versus... you know what? It's like people used to propose. Well, wait a minute. Carry a bomb into an abortion clinic, blow it up, stop those abortions. Carry a bomb into a Nazi gas chamber, blow it up, stop those Jews from dying. To me, that's an equivalence.
Yeah.
Now, a certain American bishop, John Cardinal O'Connor, once made the quip, well, that's just ridiculous. This is the United States of America, not Nazi Germany. As though the fact that it was... Yeah, I mean, it's as though the fact that it was Germany was what made the Nazis evil, not the fact that they were killing Jews. And I see a lot of bishops, fall down that fallacy and that kind of stuff. But yeah, we're extremists, and we believe moral equivalencies like this.
Yeah.
But, that doesn't mean,
And we grew up... We grew up in a world that was full of extremists. Mm-hmm. Especially on the pro-life issue. I mean, that was our whole life, was the pro-life movement.
We grew up in a world where there were lots of extremists, a few of whom did not have the sense of prudence that we have.
Right. That's where I was coming. We grew up with... And my point is... There are a lot of those kinds of people in every single movement.
Yeah.
The key there is that there are leaders who do have prudence. And you have to kind of trust that those leaders would keep people from doing certain things. We do know a guy who had kind of somewhat... he had gotten it in his head that if he went in strapped with dynamite and blew up an abortion clinic,
he was going to be
that this would help the cause. He was, told by a responsible leader, no, that's not going to help the cause. That's just going to kill people and hurt people, and
make
it's not going to stop abortion at all.
It'll lose sympathy for us and fail to stop abortion.
Right. So that kind of thing exists. Now, for the government to try to round up people who are like that, they would, by pretending to instigate an attack or something like that, and then arrest the people for doing it, it's just ludicrous, because it would include many, many people in any kind of movement whatsoever.
Right. And as you say, right or left.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just, that's... When people are committed to something, that's the direction that they generally go, and either they kind of understand the cost and the outcome of these kinds of things, or they don't, and so they could be manipulated. It's not an excuse for the FBI to do it. It's inexcusable for what they did. But the world is still reporting on this whole thing as if it's a bunch of Trump supporters who plan to attack the Capitol. It's ludicrous.
Yeah.
Did you hear about John McAfee?
John McAfee?
As in McAfee software?
No.
Okay, well, he was
McAfee
arrested for tax evasion or something.
Oh, you mean McAfee? Like McAfee, like the antivirus?
Well, it's McAfee. McAfee.
Okay. All right. I guess. I get. I don't. You know what's weird is that I've seen MAC where they pronounced Mc, and I've seen MC
McAfee.
where they pronounced Mac. But I was called. Yeah. Okay. McAfee.
Yeah, that guy.
Antivirus. Those are who you're talking about. Okay.
Right. So I guess the starter of that company. Was arrested. He had gone to Spain, I think, to avoid arrest, but he was caught in Spain, and he was going to be extradited. And
for what?
I don't know how much of this is true. I mean, you hear these conspiracy theories, and it's like, I never know. Apparently, he had tattooed on his arm, "I will not kill myself." But guess what happened? He's dead. So they're calling this an Epstein type of thing.
Okay, so he was arrested for something that we're not sure what. He had a tattoo on his arm that says, "I will not kill myself." Kind of a proclamation to the world. If you find me dead, it's not by my hand.
Right. And he had said this.
He's dead, and they're trying to make it look like it's
he
by
had
his
tweeted
hand.
this and other things. He had told everybody, "I'm not going to kill myself. Don't let them tell you I killed myself." He provided software and equipment for a lot of officials.
Oh,
and
okay.
he said, "I've heard. I don't know how much is true. I didn't, but they're saying that he said he recorded a lot of really, really bad things. And he also said that he is a kill switch. So if he ends up dead, the world will find out. I don't know how the world would find it out, though. But
kill switch would be like if he doesn't check in every 48 hours, something will be sent to a bunch of people who are going to release it to the world, blah, 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 whatever.
Right. But, okay, shortly thereafter, there was a 12-story condo in Florida that collapsed.
Oh, so people are thinking maybe that's where he had his kill switch load.
That's what the story is.
Okay.
Florida's trying to blame this on rising waters and crap like that, which makes me know that they're lying about it. If they're telling us the cause of a collapsed condo is because of rising sea waters, give me a break.
That doesn't make any sense. I know.
Yeah. But so I don't know.
I heard about the collapse. A bunch of people died, right?
Yeah. And there's still last I looked, there's still like 150 people missing. That I think at this point we could assume are dead. So we've decided that around 650 men or soldiers will stay in Afghanistan to provide security for the workers at the embassy. So we're taking out all the troops except for 650 guys who those guys are sitting ducks.
I know.
That's sad.
Especially in Afghanistan. I mean, they won't. This is the Taliban won't hesitate to use like missiles on the embassy. This
is really bad. So I know there's this little thing with Russia is kind of going back and forth with the United Kingdom, and I guess some British vessels shot missiles or torpedoes or something toward Russian vessels, and they are claiming that these were just these were not intended to be threatening, but Russia's taking it as a threat, and I guess there's some words going back and forth there. So I guess we'll watch that.
Okay.
Microsoft announces Windows 11 is coming out. I guess toward the end of this year. I don't know. It'll be a free upgrade. So they are beyond coming out with a new version of Windows in order to sell everyone. Yeah. At this point, they need to keep the market share, because if I've got Windows 10, I can either upgrade to Windows 11 for $100, or I can go ahead and get a Mac.
Oh, okay. Right.
So I think they understand they have to provide the free upgrade from now on instead of selling a new version.
But Windows, Microsoft is. I don't want to get too, eager. And clearly they're about market share and that kind of stuff. But they are really driving some new ground with interoperability with Linux in some really exciting ways.
You know what I did?
I've been pretty happy with Microsoft post Bill Gates.
You know what I did last month is I put Windows on a Raspberry. So
That's
I've got
cool.
Windows 10 running on a Raspberry. I can watch a movie or whatever I want. Mm-hmm. It's not super fast or
but
anything,
it's fun.
but it's
Yeah.
And I could make a program there, and I could control some kind of robot or anything I want using that way, and it's Bluetooth and everything. So
Yeah.
pretty neat.
My son Danny put something on a Raspberry. It might have been Linux, or I think it was Linux more than Android. But anyway, he put something on a Raspberry that had let him use the have you ever seen the what's the Linux gaming box, or the Microsoft gaming box? Xbox.
The Xbox.
Yeah. So the Xbox has this thing where they've got like this bar. It's a tiny little bar that sits on top of the TV or whatever, and it's got a couple of cameras or whatever. It senses your motion, so it can.
Oh,
it
yeah.
can-
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, he had that. He had the Raspberry with that bar doing something that was cool and interesting. I forget exactly what
cool.
it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could set up like it could be a remote control. Like you wave this arm, it
Yeah, so
pauses
it's okay,
your
this arm is
show.
go to
So,
the-
yeah.
Yeah.
You do all kinds of cool things. It's just cool things you could do. They're not real
Yeah.
worthy of anything. It's just cool. Where are we here? Oh, Gibraltar votes 62% in favor of legalizing abortion. That's very sad.
Ooh. Yeah.
It's the whole world is going in this weird direction. I think America is going in the opposite direction still.
I hope. I mean, I know that the leftists are doing everything they can to drive us in that direction. It's almost like they lost when it came to slavery, but they are bound and determined to make up for it with abortion.
Yeah, and it's... we've said it on this show before, and I'm always going to say it. Everything on the left eventually comes to abortion. Every issue on the left is about abortion.
Has something to do with abortion. It's about abortion, ultimately.
Immigration, the economy, the trans
whatever stuff. That's
all
a
of it.
disgusting thing. But yeah, it comes down to abortion.
So we're conducting airstrikes in I guess the Iraq-Syrian border.
Okay.
But these are Iranian-supported areas, or at least the troops there are Iranian-supported. So I don't know. We're back at it again. Trump kept a war from breaking out between us and Iran, and
Biden's back to trying to
get that war. We're doing our normal thing again. The military complex is back in power. And we're also shipping 2 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine to Peru, 2.5 million doses of the Moderna vaccine to Pakistan. And we're sending bunches to Bangladesh and a bunch of other places. We're sending vaccines everywhere,
Are these places that people care about?
If we can't
this
convince
vaccine?
all the Americans to get it, we'll convince these third world countries where these places people are dying of polio and leprosy, but we're going to cure them of COVID.
From COVID.
Yeah. Crazy. Hey, guess who's out of jail? Bill Cosby.
Oh.
Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned his conviction.
Oh, really? It was a Supreme Court overturn, huh?
Yeah. I have no idea why, but
okay. I'm gonna show how ignorant I am. What exactly was he convicted of?
We talked about this a couple weeks ago. He was drugging and raping women.
Oh, it was the drugging part. Okay, because I knew he was having sex with women after his shows and stuff like that.
Yeah,
he was drugging them. Okay,
but some of them,
but it was overturned for some reason.
Drug them, and
well, it's because he really wanted it and got a lot of pleasure out of it, and who's to get in the way of that?
We're going to deny him. He's a rapist.
Exactly.
He should embrace his rapism.
That's right. That's the modern leftist way.
Well, that's all I got.
All right. Well, I got some weird stuff. I'm not sure I'm allowed to do all of it. A guy at McDonald's, an Iowa man, didn't get the sauce that he wanted for his chicken McNuggets, and so his I don't know, his way of dealing with that was to call in a bomb threat. Police say a bomb
Would
threat.
they not give him the right?
On McDonald's after he was shafted out of sauce. I think he it's like they didn't put the sauce in the bag or something like that. He got home. Oh, there's no sauce. I'm going to call in a bomb threat. It's like they forgot to include the salt for my burger or fries or something like that.
So it's not like he said, "Hey, you forgot my tartar sauce," and they're like, "No, we're not giving you any tartar sauce." Fine, I'll do a bomb threat.
It just says he was shafted out of it. You know, that kind of I don't know why, but this one reminds me of. You remember Gilbert Gnarly?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gary Burbank.
If you're not in Cincinnati,
Gilbert Gnarly. Yeah, I know. You guys will have to look it up on the internet. Gilbert Gnarly, Gnarley. And
Gnarley.
Gilbert Gnarly, Gnarley.
St. Peter's and Newark, Golden Buckeye Retirement Community.
Yeah. But, you know, this reminds me of the one, he called the police, he wanted to report a drive-by. And finally it came out, he's not talking about a drive-by shooting, he's talking about a drive-by clapping. Because these teenagers would drive by and clap twice and turn off all the lights, and then the old people were stumbling around.
Oh, gosh. That's good.
Yeah.
Good old Gary Burbank.
He would have fun with this bomb threat at McDonald's thing. He would find something to do with that.
Yeah, certainly a bomb threat over tartar sauce or whatever kind of sauce it was.
Whatever it is the guy didn't get, yeah.
Okay. I mean, the thing is, you can kind of see that culminating. It's like a guy has a bad day. It's one thing after another. And finally he gets home. He's looking forward to his burger or whatever it is with sauce or nuggets.
It's like the straw that breaks the camel's back kind of thing. Yeah.
It's just like, that does it. I'm calling in a bomb threat. I've had days like that. I've just never actually did it.
All right. Anyway, the next one is actually a video, and if I don't even think I would have run with this one. You'll have to put the link up. If you didn't have a Great Dane, before.
Oh yeah.
But there's these three kids that are running a race. Well, these three kids are running a race, and this dog decides he wants to play with them, and like just out of the blue, these kids, he's so fast the kids don't even see him coming. He plows into one of the kids just playfully. But of course, he's a Great Dane.
Yeah, so when a Great Dane sees you running, he thinks, "Oh, it's time to run."
And the video shows it like 3 times in a row, and then it slows it down and shows it in slow motion. The kid that got plowed is fine. And that's all the information I have. But
I can totally see this
He's
happening.
a puppy Great Dane. Yeah, I know.
Great Danes are so
many
stupid.
Would completely do that.
I hated this dog like you couldn't believe. The dog survived because the kids and my wife liked him. I can't even describe how much I hated this dog. This dog took off a piece of my wife. The dog cut my wife's finger off. Yeah, she's missing their pinky now because of this dog. She
was like attaching him to a tree, and the chain was like wrapped around her.
No, she was holding him and she was walking him, and he saw a cat and he bolted and it just ripped her finger right off because the thing was wrapped around her finger. That's how big they are and how massive. And when they decide they're going to go in one direction, they go, and most of the time they can't stop because they get momentum and they're too stupid to
break.
No, I mean, I hated that dog so much. Okay.
Anyway, let's see. Next up. Okay, so this, I kind of picked this. It's not like super funny or interesting, but so a Wyoming man calls the sheriff to ask why he wasn't arrested. And
why he what?
Was not arrested. Apparently, they raided and searched his house. Well, no, he called them and said, "Hey, you raided and searched my house, and I'm on meth, so why didn't you arrest me?" In fact, nobody had raided his house. I guess this is what meth does to you.
Meth gives you some weird hallucinations.
Delusions?
I'm not speaking from personal experience, like having hallucinations, but witnessing people have hallucinations
who have been on it. Okay.
Meth.
So it finally that he told them that he had used it a day and a half before and was still high. Did poorly on a sobriety test. He must have gone into them or something like that. Oh, no. After the call, a deputy spotted him driving on the road. He pulled him off the road. He told the deputy that he was still high from a day and a half ago, did poorly on sobriety tests, and he was arrested. Now, here's the thing why I decided to go with this one. Okay, the story is filed June 28th, which is, 2 days ago?
Yeah.
So this is in a town called Gillette, Wyoming. Well, okay, we already talked. I went on a vacation parts out west.
Yeah.
As part of this tour bus, on one of the days, normally, you go to here and there's lunch. You can get some lunch, buy whatever you want.
Yeah.
One of the days, the lunch was going to be, okay, we're going to drop you off. You need to find something for lunch at the grocery store, and then we're going to go to Devil's Tower. You'll eat your lunch at some picnic tables, and then we'll go up to the tower. The grocery store was the Walmart in Gillette, Wyoming. I was in that town just a few days before this guy decided that
you didn't know
the
you were
sheriff's
in a
office
meth
had raided
town.
his. I know. I had no idea. And Wyoming is the. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say,
Wyoming
Wyoming is the least densely populated state of the country.
Is it?
Yeah. So to pick the one town where the one meth town probably in all of Wyoming.
It reminds me of Philip K. Dick. He was in two ways. First of all, he was convinced that the FBI was watching him.
Mm-hmm.
And he kept calling the FBI wanting a copy of his file because he wanted to know what they had on him. And his house had gotten broken into once, and he thought it was the FBI, but then he started to think if maybe it was him to convince himself, because he was wondering if he was hallucinating, and he actually did it himself. But so he kept calling the FBI to try to get his file to find out what they had gotten on him. And I think years later he finally did get it. And all it was, the only thing in the file was him calling the FBI and saying, can I have my file? That was what was in the file.
That's his FIFO request.
Yeah, it was. And then he was on meth. He was on methamphetamines. Yeah. It's not like the meth we have today out there. But, he felt he was addicted to it. But they didn't have a whole bunch of meth clinics. But they did have heroin clinics. Okay. Mm-hmm. So he faked being a heroin addict so he could get into the clinic and get off of meth.
Dry out. Okay.
That guy was a character.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. My last one. I'm not sure if we're allowed to do this. You can cut it out if you don't want to. But in Japan, an emergency crew rescued what they thought was a drowning woman. Turned out to be a blow-up doll in the water.
They rescued a blow-up doll. Maybe.
Yeah,
maybe it was an exercise that the fire department or whatever was
like
going
they do those
through.
mock disasters and stuff like that.
And somebody caught them, and they were they didn't want to look stupid, so they were like, "Oh, we thought it was a body."
Because they couldn't just go get a real mannequin made or something like that. They ordered a sex doll.
Blow up doll.
Anyway, that's the end. It's been a slow news week, which is weird because we missed last week too. I expected there to be a lot more stories, but those four are all I've got.
I had a whole bunch. I only did the last week. I didn't do 2 weeks ago, other than that thing with Pope Francis.
I was surprised you didn't see the thing though that they just maybe it's too old and didn't show up. I don't know how you do your news searches, but there's a new black hole that they say.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like it appears it's in our galaxy. It's not like one of those supermassive black holes that's at the center of a galaxy. It's a black hole that's in our galaxy, which they think, okay, then it has to be a stellar black hole that was made from the collapsing of a star. But they have always assumed that you could never see one of those that's more than, I don't know, like 17 times the mass of the sun or something like that. But this one is a lot more than what they thought should be possible. Oh, wait a minute. Here's
a lot more massive?
A lot more massive than what they thought should be possible for a stellar black hole.
Oh.
Here it is. Until recently, scientists did not think it was possible for a stellar black hole to have a mass larger than 20 times that of the sun. An approximation based on their understanding of the way stars evolve and die in the Milky Way. But that assumption was crushed in the gravity of a monster black hole that a group of Chinese led, so who knows whether it's real, international scientists discovered inside our own galaxy. This hole has a mass 70 times that of the sun. And they're saying that, now some cosmologists are going to have to rethink their theory of how stars maybe are formed and stuff like that.
Maybe, but are people, I keep hearing China make these claims. Are people
It's like, well, is it real?
Verifying this stuff?
Yeah, that's the thing that has me kind of like,
saying all kinds of things.
Not, because it's China led.
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe it's not.
But I mean, I don't know why. Why would they think that it couldn't be larger than that? I mean, can't a black hole eventually suck in another star?
Through accretion. Yeah, that's what bothers me. That's what I wonder. It's like, okay, wouldn't that just be a function of the age of the black hole? And how many stars it's had a chance to suck in?
I mean, if there's two, I guess, okay, when you think about how far we are from the nearest solar system, and if we assume that most solar systems have that kind of spacing, then maybe, okay, even if our sun became a black hole, it's not going to suck in any other suns.
Right.
Because they're so far away.
Not immediately, but over time, that little bit of because the stars revolve around the center of the galaxy and stuff like that, and I don't know whether you're talking about timelines of a billion years, because they say our universe is about 14 billion years old.
Yeah.
Or if you're talking about timelines of, oh no, you would need at least 50 billion years, in which case it's okay, yeah, then it wouldn't accrete that much.
So, okay,
So,
but even then, I mean, if you had two solar systems that just happened to come out close together, they're part of the same nebula. They were formed in the same nebula, and they were kind of close together, and then they...
What about two black holes merging?
Well, yeah, something like that. Both of them become black holes, and maybe, even both of them, maybe they were two star systems.
Yeah.
You have two star systems, that's 4 stars, that eventually become 2 black holes, and then they're close enough together to where they start... But as they start coming in at each other, don't they start spinning? And isn't that the idea of you got those spinning, I can't remember what they're called, spinning black holes, where spinning neutron stars, where they're going so fast that they can't come into each other because of the speed.
neutron stars can do that, I think, but they also have neutron stars that are spinning. It's kind of cool that they can do this, but we actually have recorded footage of neutron stars spinning into black holes, and
so they do actually.
It's kind of cool because what happens is the closer they get, the faster they spin. And it's like this neutron star. If you can imagine a neutron star and how dense that is, it's like our sun collapsed down to the size of a golf ball or something. And it's spinning around this black hole, and it actually spins so fast that when we sense the movement of the neutron star, we can actually turn that into an audio frequency it starts, might be spinning around 20 times per second around the black hole, and it increases to the point where it's goes up to 1,000 times per second, and we have audio recordings of these neutron stars being sucked in by black holes.
I didn't know that part of it. Now, the first time they saw this,
like that,
they mistook it for intelligent life, didn't they?
Oh, I never heard that. That would be so funny.
They saw these blinking, and they thought that it's so steady that cannot. Yeah, pulsars. That's what I was thinking of. And they thought, well, that can't be natural. Only some kind of intelligent design would create something that steady. And they and then they found out that's what it was. And they
I think those are like 2 neutron stars that are orbiting or something like that.
Yeah, that's what that is. Okay.
But anyway, I'm not sure why that's. It was a story. It's in the Washington Post. I get Chinese led. Every time I see Chinese anymore, it's like, I got to throw some salt on there.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Because it's not like NASA, where, hey, we discovered this, and you can see exactly what we saw by going to this website, and here it is. Everybody in the world can see it. I love that about NASA.
Yeah, they take seriously the fact that they're a public organization.
And it truly is public. Maybe there's some stuff. Obviously, there's some things that they don't share, but most of what they do,
stuff, sure.
You can see. Yeah. We'll have to do one about aliens.
Sometime, yeah.
We've touched on it here and there. All right. I guess that's all we got.
That's all I got.
All right. Well, folks, think about what we said. And as always,
circle them beads.
Keep praying. We'll get there.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah.
All right, I'm recording again.
The Saint of the Week.
That's right. We talked
just
about this. We're going to try to do a Saint of the Week. Since a Saint of the Month, where we spend a whole episode on a saint, it just involves... we both have busy lives. It's too much research.
What'd you say?
I said we both have busy lives. It's too much research.
So we'll just do short stories about like saints.
This isn't our job. This is something we do on our extra time.
Yeah. Hold on. I've got a couple here. I got to pick one out. We'll talk about Babylas. Babylas. He was the bishop in Antioch.
Huh.
This I don't know when he died, but he was under the persecution of Decius, Decius, the Emperor Decius.
Okay.
Decius succeeded Emperor Phillips. Emperor Phillips was he was not just he claimed to be a Christian, to the point where he had gone to he had gone and joined the Christian community. Now, he had gone to one of the pagan holidays, and as a result, the church, the bishop there said if he wanted to come back to church, he would have to do public penance. And Emperor Phillips did the public penance, but he did a couple other things, and He wasn't a great Christian or anything, but the Christian community under his rule was able to flourish to the point where they're building buildings and churches. So right after him, Emperor Decius actually killed, we think, Emperor Phillips and took his place.
Okay.
So in 250 AD, Decius was he's parading through the streets as part of this pagan holiday, and he had heard that Saint Babylos was in his church praying. Babylos was he was a bishop, so he was bishop of Antioch. He's in Antioch in this church praying, and Decius wanted to see this because he had heard that these things were like miraculous, that miracles would happen. So he goes to the church and he wants to come in, but Babylos runs and locks the doors. And he says, you can't come in here until you've done public penance. In some reports, Decius throws him into jail immediately. In other reports, he's scared of there's a Christian crowd around him, and he doesn't want to do it in front of everyone, so he has him arrested later. While he arrested him, he had Babylos had been traveling with 3 young boys and their mother, a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So he has them arrested, and he's trying to get Babylos to renounce Christianity, and of course Babylos won't. And he asks who these 3 children are, and he says, these are my spiritual children. I've been preparing them to be Christians. And he said, and he kind of challenged Decius, saying that that he would not be able to turn them against Christ either, any more than he could himself. So Decius turns to these 3 children and tries to convince them to renounce Christianity, and they don't. He has them whipped, and they still don't. In some reports, he sets them free. In other reports, he has them burned at the stake. None of them ever do. They all become martyrs.
Wow.
So Decius is trying to get Babylos still to forsake his faith, and but Babylos won't. And this is like a number of years he's trying to convince him. For some reason, he seemed kind of obsessed with him. He kept him in jail for these 3 years. But he finally has him beheaded. And before his beheading, Babylos is wearing this chain and collar. And he asks the people around him, bury me with this chain and collar so that everybody knows how evil Decius is. He's condemning Decius for his cruelty.
Right.
And Decius has him put to death, and Decius goes ahead and orders them to bury him with his chain and collar. Later, the Christians there in Antioch build a church over his remains. Now, 100 years later, there is a ruler named Gallus, and he is serving under Julian the Apostate is the emperor. And Gallus, I believe, Gallus is a Christian. And hold on, I gotta reread this real quick. About 5 miles from Antioch, there's a idol and kind of a building there erected to the pagan god Apollo. And there's an oracle there that's prophesizing. And Gallus wants to put a stop to it. So he goes to Antioch and he digs up the bones of Babylos. And he takes him to close to this idol, and he buries him there. Well, the idol stops prophesizing and stops making oracles and is silent for 11 years. Now, Julian the Apostate comes, and I think this is after Gallus is either gone or dead, and they had actually built a church over Babylus's bones again, the second church.
Okay.
Julian the
Right.
Apostate comes in 362, and he's offering sacrifices to Apollo, but the idol will no longer speak. I don't really know what that means.
Right.
I don't know if this is a priest who's speaking for the idol or if there's some other way that it's happening. But, by the way, the name of this town is Daphne, where this Apollo idol
right.
is.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes to Antioch and asks the Apollo there why the one in Daphne won't talk anymore. And he was told that the one in Daphne was full of old bones and they have to be cleared away. He finds out about the bones of Babylus there and finds out that the oracle had stopped talking when the bones were buried there. So he orders the Christians there to dig up the bones and get them out of the city. Well, the Christians, they did what they were told. They dug them up, and then they had kind of a ceremonial parade back to Antioch to put them back in their original spot. When they leave with the bones, the temple of Apollo is struck by lightning and burns to the ground. And of course, now there's no oracle. Julian goes to Daphne and he tortures some priests and other people to find out if maybe they had set fire to it, but all he could come up with is, no, it was struck by lightning. And Julian was too scared to rebuild the temple because he thought he might be struck by lightning, because by then he was convinced that it really did get struck by lightning. And that is the story of Saint Babylus, the bishop in Antioch.
Yeah, keeps
You find
keeps
all
reaching
kinds
out
of,
after the grave there. That is kind of interesting.
I started going through these. I thought, okay, let's do a saint of the week. So I just started with A, and I found like 6 saints that start with A, and then I thought, I'm going to skip the B because I'll just do A's for the rest of my life. So that was the first B I came up with. I have a whole bunch of other ones, though. There are so many interesting saints that I had never even heard of. Many of them in that same in the first 300 years. It's amazing.
That is.
It's going to be fun coming up with these saint stories, though. They're fun.
Yeah. Well, I like this one because the story went on after his death.
Yeah. He speaks out from the dead, and he actually destroys a
crushes the oracles.
Yeah. Okay, now think about what we said. And as always,
circle the beads.
All right, bye, folks.
All right, bye, everyone.